When we speak of Rinanubandhan, that's like a former relationship. As you mentioned, a cosmic debt of a former relationship. Having heard Rameshji and read his books, what I understand is that there is no me. This entire thing is an illusion, and all there is consciousness. So, whose relationship with who?
But Rameshji never said there is no me. There is, in fact, his whole teaching was talking to the me, to the ego. That is why he said that I am that, Maharaj's book. He would have changed the title to that is you, me, he and she. That is all of us. Of course, I told him that title, nobody would buy that book, but his point was that there is the me, which has to operate in daily living. And because you see, if this is all an illusion, it includes the one saying this is all an illusion. You can't be out of it and say this is an illusion. You are in it.
There's no continuity as such. So whose relationship with whom is continuing?
Could you explain that?
As in, he has given enough instances to say that there is no rebirth. Once the person is gone, there is a new, and I have a deep understanding of that.
Sure.
So then I come across something like in the Sai Sat Charita, it's mentioned that I have known you for your past births. You know, you were a goat, and then you were a snake, and then you were born in a Brahmin family. So who is born when there is no person, if you know what I mean?
Yes, I know what you mean. But let's get back to your question first about Rinanubandhan, because I'm more concerned with what the questioner is asking. What is the point you want to ask about Rinanubandhan?
Okay, so there is a me, but what is continuing exactly? Because there is no same person continuing. It's a new body, mind, organism altogether.
Yes.
So, Rinanubandhan of whom with whom?
Yes. Now, let's explore this in different ways. Okay. First of all, please don't cross-pollinate. What I mean by that is, when you look at Rinanubandhan from the concept of previous births, okay, where there is the Vasanas and sanskaras which carry on from birth to birth. So while the ego dissolves with the body, at that the ego dissolves, the bundle of Vasanas and sanskaras continues because those are unresolved. So it comes down to what is the definition of the ego as far as rebirth is concerned. If you define the bundle of Vasanas and sanskaras as the individual ego, that does take rebirth. But if your understanding is that the ego dissolves with the body, then it is not the ego that takes rebirth. Now, there are two schools of thought about this, but that is not the point. The point is that an unresolved sanskar takes rebirth till it is resolved. This is where Rinanubandhan comes in. This is where the cause-effect principle in relationships comes in. So, for example, if you and me have a very disturbed relationship where we blame and fight all the time, accusing each other of things, this pocket, if it is unresolved, is going to continue. You see? The bandhan, the bondage of this conflict, because it is unresolved, is going to continue till it resolves. And that is why the masters, whether it is Ramana Maharshi, Sai Baba himself, what do they all say? What do they all say about relationships? Sai Baba himself has spoken about the dog, and he said, you didn't give food to the dog, that was me. Because what is your relationship with the dog? So Rinanubandhan, which is the cosmic debt of prior relationships, which is the reason why you'll find in life Certain people come to you, certain people don't. Why is that? Because of Rinanubandhan. But this question is asking what? Ultimately, all relationships are your relationship with yourself. And that is why I said in reference to this girl, you can't shut out everyone from your life and escape. Because each relationship reflects your relationship with yourself. In that sense, who's Rinanubandhan? In that who's Rinanubandhan? But do you realize that? When you are at work, when you are with your family, when you are with your friends, do you realize that at that time? When you accept no one is the doer of their actions, the bandhan is finished. You are no longer imprisoning people. When you accept we are all instruments of God, the bandhan is finished. The rin is also finished. Now you can say, now you can tell me who's Rinanubandhan. That is precisely the point. Are you living your life like that? Because if you are, that means your relationship is no longer with individuals, it is with God. If I don't point fingers at any individual and I accept they are instruments of God the way God made them, including myself, my relationship is with God. Then who's Rinanubandhan? Then the game is up. So, is one operating from that space? Now, for example, and I mentioned this a couple of times before, when I worked on the last book with Ramesh before he passed away, and I asked him, what would you like me to mention in the acknowledgements? And he said, after 35 books, I don't want to thank anyone. After all, who is to thank whom and for what? Which is why? We are all instruments. Consciousness is going to thank consciousness for what? I don't want to thank individuals anymore. By now, after 35 books, it's okay. Yes, that realization is there. Is that realization there? Then we can say, but the Rnanubandhan is there. It's like a tennis match. You've seen when two people fight, when two lovers fight, or whatever it is. It's always conflicting views until one, as Eckhart says, has the awareness to just stand in presence, and then you realize that the other person is not hitting the ball back in your court and has put the racket down. And then you can't argue with the field of presence. But for that, it takes one of the two to be very aware. You see, it's most fascinating. If I clap now, the most attention, your attention is drawn to the sound. It rushes to the sound, so to speak. So, supposing you're not expecting it, you'll get a start. Your consciousness has gone to the sound. Now, supposing you have various aspects of conditioning and someone says something which really triggers you, you get upset. Your consciousness has rushed to that spot. It has left its center of presence and gone into this whole thing and got involved. For what? Because of Rnanubandhan. It has got absorbed in this. You told me this, how dare you? You've been treating me like this since the last 10 years of my life, since I was a child, blah, 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 blah. Because I blame that person has hit a soft spot, my consciousness has rushed there, and what have I created? Bondage. I've got mired in blame, condemnation, conflict, hatred, malice, and all these things. And so one keeps doing that. One keeps strengthening this bandhan, because this is where the consciousness rushes based on prior conditioning. But when this teaching comes in and says, hey, look here, just accept people for the way they are, the way God created them, with all their flaws, like you have. You may have different flaws, they may have different flaws. But that's it. So what happens? Next time someone says something you don't like, you find that that force, that rush of reaction is no longer binding you, which is the bondage, which is the bandhan, like it was earlier. So that mechanism is getting dissolved. You're becoming free of all that in this life. That is what starts happening. So that is why it always boils down to relationships. Because you see, why did Ramana Maharshi, when he was asked what about one's relationship with others, his answer was, there are no others. Everyone posts that on social media, there are no others there. What does it mean? It means when you see this for what it means. That is why Joel Goldsmith says, give up the belief in two powers. Because if you believe someone can do something to you, it means that you believe there's a power apart from God. His whole teaching was based on this, give up the belief in two powers.